Hello everyone, thank you very much for joining us today at our third Resilience event with Urban Splash Group Director Nathan Cornish. Over the past several months, the BAA has moved their focus and attention for online engagement, and we have been developing design competitions like our Calling All Creatives Home, where we've received entries from all across the country, all themed around what home means to you. These entries have come from students, professionals and families, and we've now extended the deadline until the end of September, so there's still time to enter. The BAA's online event series has already engaged with over 1,000 people in the past couple of months, with brilliant speakers taking the time to contribute and share their experiences with us. I'm delighted to tell you that the Brum Architecture Committee and our sponsors have been looking for ways to support the community and have donated a combined £5,000 to the Architects Benevolent Society and Stephen Lawrence Trust. All of this is possible because of our brilliant committee and partners. The BAA is supported by a number of partners and sponsors, and thanks to these organisations, we're able to deliver a huge programme of events and activities all year round. I'd just like to say thank you to Alamure, Ibstock, Marley, Delta Light, FRA, Taylor Maxwell, Allgood, Armitage Shanks, Milliken, Kitchen Gallery, Altro and Rainers. Tonight, we are joined by our partner Reba West Midlands, who are a fantastic collaborator and supporter of BAA. Co-hosting tonight's talk is the Reba West Midlands Regional Director, Becky Smith. Hi, Becky.
Hi all, hi. I thought I'd just start by giving you a bit of an overview of Reba West Midlands, what we're doing here. We're a really new team within the West Midlands. And I only joined Reba in February this year, just before a global pandemic happened. We are here, I'm a practicing architect. I was a practicing architect until February. So I know the ins and outs of the industry, and I'm 12 years post-qualification now. And I've worked in a variety of sectors. We're here to support you. So it's just a case of, getting in touch with us. We're here, we're working from home, and we're here working with our branches as well, which includes the BAA and other branches throughout the West Midlands. So we're here to support you in any way that you'd like to. We've got a number of initiatives that are looking to come about in September, including sustainability and climate change, and working with the BAA on a series to do with that as well. And we're also looking to start a small emerging practices network, so we can support small and emerging practices. We've got an increased amount of new starters in the industry and in the area, so it'd be great for you to get in touch, and we'll support you as well. And that's part of Resilience, which is what we're going to talk about tonight. So the new series here by the BAA talks, we'll hear from business and industry leaders as they discuss how we're working to overcome the challenges we face daily, sharing knowledge and explaining unique tactics being used to outmaneuver and adapt to a worldwide pandemic. With economic impacts that widely predicted to worsen the 2008 crash, the Resilience series will help you navigate the global pandemic and the economic storm to come about. And I'll hand over to Dion, who will introduce our speaker this evening.
Thanks, Becky. So my name's Dion Barrett. I'm a BAA member and architect at Associated Architects. So today we are talking with Urban Splash Group Director Nathan Cornish. Nathan has been with Urban Splash since 2002, has been responsible for the delivery of some of our iconic regeneration schemes at Fort Dunlop, Rotunda and its upside down houses in Salford, while still retaining responsibility for high profile developments at Royal William Yard in Plymouth and New Islington in Manchester. His role now also includes overseeing the group's £100 million investment portfolio. He also oversees many of the group's disposals and acquisitions. In 2017, Nathan led the bid team that won a developer competition to develop Port Loop in Birmingham, a 43-acre mixed-use site, which is the company's largest land acquisition to date. And in 2019, Nathan led the acquisition of a 20-acre site in Northstowe in Cambridge, its latest in its growing modern method of construction, housing business. It now gives me great pleasure to hand over to Nathan.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for inviting me to speak. I think the the format that I've been asked to follow is to talk about what we've been up to as a business, you know, around the sort of pre and during the pandemic, for about 15, maybe maximum 20 minutes, and then invite the audience members to interact in a Q&A session for the remaining time, really. So I'm going to now attempt some IT and share my screen. So this worked earlier. We'll see if it does now. Right. So if Becky gives me a thumbs up because I can see Becky. Is that working? Great. Okay, so I'll crack on. So we're a developer basically, but we like to think of ourselves as an urban regeneration company and a house builder that does things differently. We've been going now for, it's a bit out of date this slide, we've been going now for 26 years, and we've done a number of schemes across the country. I'm sure many of you on the call are familiar with what we've done. We're quite interesting, I suppose, in some ways. We're not just a developer as such. We've got a construction arm that does a lot of our construction. We've got a factory that builds modular housing, which we'll come on to. And moreover, we also, somewhat unusually, hold a lot of our residential units and indeed all of our commercial portfolio. So we sort of build, hold, manage and retain, really to invest in the long term, and that's something that's a theme of what we do as a business. So in 2 minutes, I thought I gave myself, what have we done in 26 years in 2 minutes? Well, a lot of the people on the call will know us from Fort Dunlop, you know, 500,000 square foot on the M6. I'll never forget my first day at work. I got handed the files. The chairman winked at me and said, sort that one out. And I just realised, I said, is that building on the M6 that's been vacant for 25 years? And the chairman said, yeah, we start with the easy ones. So we got on with doing that with a lot of scepticism from the Birmingham market, actually, but we got on and did that. The first thing we did was make it bigger because we didn't think 500,000 was big enough. So we built a hotel and then converted it into a mixed-use scheme of offices and commercial space, retail and leisure on the ground floor. Great success, and you know, really interesting and great scheme to work on in Birmingham. And then of course the Rotunda that those of you that work in the city, Birmingham City Centre, will know this building very well, and we were picked by Hammerson's as part of their Bullring joint venture to be the developer on this. So it was a great thing to be doing, actually. The two sort of, you know, probably two of the most iconic buildings, other than the sort of BT Tower in Birmingham, to be working on these at the same time in the mid-2000s was a real privilege for me, because I'm actually a Midlands lad from Nottingham. So, you know, it was a real privilege to work on these schemes, and hopefully we've done a decent job on them. But we've also been doing all sorts of stuff. So we've done Fort Dunlop commercial scheme, Rotunda, which was a residential scheme. We've played with modern methods of construction. This is back in 2005, where we did a modular scheme, apartment scheme actually in Manchester. We've done hotels. This is up in Morecambe, converted an old Art Deco hotel. And we've changed, reinvented some terraced housing, upside down houses, as a lot of people called it. And really what I'm sort of trying to show you, we've done about 70 schemes now, but it's just the breadth of sort of schemes that we take on. We'll take on anything, basically. If we think there's a potential, we think there's some great architecture, we think we've got some good ideas for it, whether it's resi, commercial, hotel, apartments, housing, or indeed office, we'll take it on. We're not a sort of one-trick pony in terms of a house builder or just an office developer. Lots of people say lovely things about us, which is always great to hear. And we're doing stuff all over the country now as we continue to grow. So what I thought I'd do is just talk about where we're at in terms of our commercial portfolio and our residential portfolio, and in particular how the pandemic and how the current market is affecting the stuff that we're doing and the way that we're thinking both now and going forward. So I'll split it into two parts, the commercial and residential. The first part will be 5 minutes or so, and then I'll finish with the residential, which is a growing and bigger part of our business at the moment, which will be about 10 minutes. So on the commercial side, it's about 1.2 million square feet, 100 million quid value or so, owned in joint venture. But it's interesting, actually, the commercial market prior to the pandemic was changing anyway, and you'll hear this a lot, that the sort of global situation is accelerating things that were happening. And I think there's no bigger industry that this is prevalent in terms of the commercial industry, because the idea that us as developers just build, you know, sort of standard office buildings and tenants will come along and take a 25-year lease and you sort of, you know, pick the keys up after 25 years have long gone. And so we've been thinking a lot over the last 2 to 3 years about how we reinvent our commercial portfolio, really. A lot of it comes back to great design. This is a building we finished about 3 years ago, Stubbs Mill in Manchester, converted warehouse. Probably would have been easier to do residential and we probably would have got more value. But on this one, we thought it just making a fantastic office space. And sure enough, we let it the day it completed to a good a sportswear manufacturer from America called Fanatics, which some of you all know. But you know, it just uncompromising, you know, design, really good, really big focus on exposing everything that we could, but not being afraid to do new things and being bold with graphics and things as well. And then our remaining portfolio, we've owned a lot of these buildings for 20 years, but as I said, about 18 months or so, 2 years ago, we started reinventing them. And as I said, we've things like breakout spaces, common meeting rooms, showers, coffee shops, all that sort of stuff that a lot of people are thinking about, really have to be part of an offer now in terms of a commercial portfolio. So Tea Factory, we completely upgraded this last year. Some of the breakout spaces that we've now providing, which are incredibly popular, albeit not that popular during the pandemic, but they will become popular again, I'm sure. But also providing services for tenants, you know, whether it's yoga or lots of different things. We can't just give people offices now. We have to give them a service, and we have to treat these people as customers, not tenants. It's very important we do that. And then Vanilla Factory, again in Liverpool, we did this finished about a year ago, and in terms of its second regeneration wave, and in the bottom left hand corner there was again a big breakout space where we provided communal space for tenants to enjoy, as well as you know, really good office space as well. And then down in Plymouth, Rawlham Yard, it's a 500,000 square foot estate there. It's a continual management play, this one. We own the entire estate, but we do all sorts of things here, whether it's organising festivals, events, you know, we manage a marina, we do all sorts of sporting events, cinema, outdoor cinema, the list goes on and on and on. And the point really is that as a commercial landlord, we have to provide these services because we have to differentiate ourselves from the rest of the people, really. And it's you know, we've been doing it for a while, but it'll become even more important as we go through this pandemic in terms of getting people back into offices. There's got to be more than a seat at a desk. And then Beehive Mill, this is the old Sankey Soap famous nightclub that we bought a couple of years ago, but we've completely reinvented it, changed the reception. Again, probably this is a pre-COVID shot, before anyone tells me off. But you know, doing tenant barbecues, DJ sessions, paying homage to what the building was before, loads of different activities, working with great tenants, in this case the Prince's Trust, and yeah, it's a building that's worked really well for us, and we'll continue to reinvent. And then probably more recently is we've been known for doing a lot of Victorian conversions and even sort of mid-century modern, like the Rotunda. But this was our sort of first go at sort of 90s nasties, if you like. So a brick building, very uninspiring, on the River Irwell, which we completely painted, put a new bold graphic on there, did some great landscaping, fitted out some units. But then we encouraged a coffee operator called Lupo to come in and provide services and meeting rooms for our occupants. And, you know, really important that, as I said, these services are offered now, and it's not just an office building, and some great landscaping. So from the commercial part, conclusions, resilience, I think a lot of it is accelerating what's already happening, really. As a landlord, I shouldn't say that word, as a property owner, it's ensuring that we're reinventing our offer continuously. The long gone are the days of owning a building and just sitting on taking the income. We've got to treat our customers as people, our people as customers, not tenants. It's very important that we do that. And we've got to be fair. I mean, clearly during the pandemic, there's been an awful lot of conversations with our customers in terms of rental payments and difficulties that they're experiencing. And we sort of call it the mum test at Splash, really, is that we deal with people, and we deal with them in the way that, would you be able to tell your mum at night how you dealt with people? And it sounds a bit cheesy, but it's actually very important. I think if there's a tenant that comes along and say they've got, they can't pay the rent, but they've got £10 million of cash in the bank and a great track record and a great covenants, then clearly we're going to have a very different conversation with a one-man band that's got a personal guarantee on an office space. So we've made a decision very early on to talk to every single one of our customers, understand their predicament, understand their situations, and be as fair as we possibly can, without obviously without forgetting that we also have a number of commitments to our banks and shareholders as well. So it has been a very, very tricky time, but the personal approach seems to have borne dividends for us, and being very, very fair with our tenants. I've said it again, our customers is always at work. And then sort of finally on the commercial, I mean, it's probably the same as the residential really. Great space, quality architecture always shines through. We learnt that in 2008, where we had a very tough recession. Some say this might even be worse, but quality always shines through, and not compromising on things is very, very important lessons to learn. And we'll continue to be brave and go ahead with with quality. So that's the commercial side, just about on track. Residential. So we're still doing lots of loft conversions that we're known for. This is on site now. This is Avro in Manchester, conversion of an old aeroplane factory. And this is on site quite literally, some of the shots here. And this is what the apartments are going to look like when it completes in October and November. And most of our purchases on these ones are still indicating that they want to complete. So that's good news. And again, I think a testament to the quality that we're providing. And clearly outside space in the pandemic is very, very important now for people. So this landscape image has gone down very, very well. And it's important that we deliver what we say we're going to do. We're still doing lots of joint ventures with the people that we like to work with, Place of People being a big one. And we've just finished this new build building about 3 months ago down in Bristol, which is a residential apartment building. This is the atrium. That's a photograph, I believe, not a CGI. And we call it the Copper Building for obvious reasons. But again, even if we're doing apartment buildings or commercial or housing, making it distinctive, making it interesting is something that's very, very important to us as a business. And then house, big part of our business, a big part of our growth for the business is that we've sort of started delivering housing and trying to get into the sort of mainstream housing market really. If you think about phones or if you think about TVs, there's been a real evolution over the last few decades, and technology is really accelerating it. Sadly, house building has lacked in that side of things, but we just want to create some great houses that are distinctive and offer a real alternative. We've partnered with Sekisui House, who are the world's largest off-site manufacturer of housing from Japan. Great partners that we're absolutely thrilled that they've taken a stake in our housing business. They've been going since 1960 and delivered 2.5 million homes, so they know what they're doing. And interestingly, there's a lot of similarities with the businesses. They're very interested in R&D. They're big on innovation, huge R&D budgets, and they have a real, they do all of their homes in a factory. And interestingly, they've got this thing that they call it love of humanity. Just about translates to that. But effectively, the people and the love of humanity is something that's core to their business, really. So it's not just an investment of money, it really is a partnership where we want to bring in a lot of their thinking and a lot of their knowledge to help us in our growth in our modular housing business. So sort of 5 themes to our housing, good quality, modern, green by default, and consumer choice are being big ones. And what we actually ask a question, I think a lot of the house building in this country is you go to the estate agent and you differentiate the house between a 2, 3 or 4 bedroom house. But I think what we like to do is ask people how much space they want and how they like to use it. So do they want 1,000 square feet or 2,000 square feet? Do they want their living space on the ground floor or on the upper floors? How many rooms do they want? And what we've come up with is basically a modular house, and what we call townhouse, where all the structures in the outside and the inside of the property effectively is completely interchangeable. So people can chop and change, and there's a number of different connotations in terms of combinations in terms of how the houses are laid out. And really it's the choices the customers. So lots of different ways of occupying the house. But always with large windows, always with high ceilings, and always with quality underpinning everything. And how we build these, a sort of traditional construction, it's madness if you think about the climate and how we build stuff. Excuse the image there, but you know, it is a sad reflection. A sort of construction industry is sad and, you know, not particularly well thought of in the UK. But if you look at this is the BMW factory over in Germany, you know, highly efficient. So we ended up buying our own factory where we were delivering a number of our homes out of. It's over in Alfreton, also in the Midlands, just in Derbyshire. And we're delivering houses outside of this, out of this factory. And literally the housing is as quick, or not quite as quick as these slides, but that was over about a 3-hour process where they get delivered to site and suddenly a house lands. So in a matter of 2 or 3 days, you can have tens of houses delivered on site. There's a bit of a sort of a misunderstanding about getting warranties and about mortgages. That's, I can say, is unfounded. We've had all the mainstream lenders lend on our schemes across the country, and now we've done about 7 or 8 schemes across the country, which we're accelerating through. And a lot of people ask us, what's our audience profile? And the honest answer is it's all over the place. There's no particular trend. It's literally been all over there's been, you know, young, old, and middle-aged, and everywhere in between, really. So it's quite interesting that it does seem to appeal to a lot of different people. And then in terms of products, we've talked about the townhouse. We've got a number of other products that are coming through at the moment. One in particular is Mansion House, which I'll briefly touch on. This is an apartment building, 6 stories, made out of cross-laminated timber, which is obviously in the news quite a bit at the moment, with the sort of suggested changes to building regs. But we really love this technology, and we're working with a company called Egowin, a shot of their factory here, who are based in northern Spain. And it's all locally sourced out of local forests in northern Spain, and beautiful quality. This is a shot from the first one that we're doing up in Manchester, and this is the finish internally, basically. So we think cross-laminated timber is a really great material to be using, environmentally incredibly sustainable. So we're very excited about that, and it's on site now. So in early part of 2021, we'll be able to show you the first cross-laminated timber building that we've done, and it will look something like this from the outside. And then finally, really, I just wanted to touch on Portloop. It's obviously close to home for many people on the call. Dion talked about it in terms of the site we won about 3 years ago. 43 acres, amazing site, kilometre or so from Brindley Place. Got a great master plan. First thing we did was spent £1 million on a park. You know, really had to show that the place meant everything. So that's one of the first things we did. Bought a marketing boat, and then we started to think about the marketing, the placemaking, the branding, but also not forgetting the industrial rich heritage that exists on the site. So we've cracked on, we've finished the first housing, which is now all sold. We've had some local events, invited a local community, had a launch party in the park, got loads of different people involved, lots of different branding. Won't bore you with that too much, but this is the first houses that we finished, fronting the canal loop, and here's the communal gardens. And then we're also now on site with phase 2, which is designed by Glen House Brick House, which is a more traditionally built residential building, again with a communal courtyard for residents to enjoy, and where people will actually get to know their neighbours. We're looking for land. That's my shameless pitch towards the end of this presentation. We're looking for land across the country, so anyone that's aware of any, give us a shout. But we're being very successful. We just landed this big scheme in Campbell Park in Milton Keynes, which will be over 500 homes. and we're on site now with this site in Cambridge, in Northstowe, and again, which will all be modern methods of construction. So something that we're very interested in. So just to conclude, are we resilient? I mean, clearly MMC is a big part of the future. It was talk about a lot about that before the pandemic, but there's even more emphasis now, and noises coming out of central government that MMC, factory building and doing off-site stuff is really vital to the to address the undersupply of housing in the UK. Great design is in our DNA. I think always when times are tough, stick to great design. I think that's always going to stand you in good stead. And we're lucky that we've always, worked with some of the best architects in the country. Glenn Housey and Killick from Shed KM, George in his red trousers, or Jackie Gillespie. We work with what we think are the world's best, really, we make no secret of the fact that we love great architects, and we're always on the lookout for new ones. Also, make sure you partner with the right people. In 2008, one of our big problems is that all of our developments were done 100% by ourselves. So we were very exposed when when there was a real problem in the financial markets and no one wanted to lend us any money anymore. We're now working with Sekisui House, mentioned the world's largest off-site house builder. We've got a joint venture with the Pears Group, one of the biggest family offices in the country. And then we've also got a major joint venture with Places People, the biggest housing association in the country. But moreover, we also partner with great local authorities, development agencies, and various other public and private sector organisations. We're very selective about the partners that we choose to work with, and they have to share a collective vision to create great places. And sort of stick to your guns, really. Hold your nerve, don't compromise. In tough times, there's a real pressure from banks, investors, property agents, all sorts of different people to compromise, value engineer, all that sort of stuff. Quality outshines, we think, a recession, and you've got to hold your nerve and try not to compromise as much as possible. And don't focus on the bottom line only. I mean, we need to make a profit. We are a private company, but it's not the sole focus of our business. I still don't know what an IRR means, and I take great pleasure in not knowing what one means. And then always staying ahead of the curve, whether that's with MMC, whether it's that quality of design, whether that's using, new architects. And basically, you stay ahead of the curve, you get the right designers, you'll get hopefully less of this, which is sort of standard housing estate, and ideally some more of this sort of stuff. So I'll finish there. I've gone 3 minutes over, so apologies for that. And thanks for listening. I'm very, very happy to take any questions.
That was great. Thank you so much, Nathan. And I think if we were in a big event now, we'd all give you a round of applause. So I'll follow with that. So we've had some lovely questions submitted. So I'll start with the first one. Could you tell us a little about your journey to becoming the group director at Urban Splash?
Yeah, I'll try and give you the short version. I work for two PLCs, Seagrow, who are now, I think, the biggest commercial property company in the country, and Savile Gordon Estates. And whilst I enjoyed both of those experiences, I got a bit disillusioned with the thinking of a PLC. This is how we do things. It's all about shareholders. We've got to give a return to the shareholders, all that sort of stuff. I got a bit disillusioned. So when I got to about 26, 27, I went traveling for a year, and I came back, and I was going to do one or two things. I was either going to work I was going to retrain as a sports journalist, or I was going to work for Urban Splash, because I'd seen what Splash had been doing. And I'd actually missed the deadline for the application for basically an assistant to Tom Bloxham, the chairman. I missed the deadline. So I phoned up I was a bit cheeky, I suppose. I phoned up the recruitment consultant. He told me I couldn't apply because I'd missed the deadline. And I suggested to him, I thought I might get this job. I think I've got a good shout on this. So if you don't put me through and I get it, you're not going to get a fee. So sure enough, I had an interview the next morning, and I got the job. So a bit of cheekiness, a bit of confidence, yeah, that's how I ended up there.
Well, if you don't ask, you don't get. So, you know, that is resilient after all. Over
Yeah,
to
I
you.
suppose being in the position you are as a group director, you're probably a very busy man, but how do you personally sort of balance that sort of work-life balance? I suppose there'll be a lot of people struggling at the moment with working from home, and it's probably even more difficult at the moment to try and strike that balance.
It's such a good question, and I'm sure everyone's dealing with this. And I have good times and bad times, quite literally. I mean, I think I had a week off last week, but the week before, I don't think I'd had a week off since the start of lockdown, and I was really feeling it. And I don't know if anyone sort of feels this as well. Is that when you sort of back-to-back Teams video calls all day, I feel totally exhausted by the end of the day. It feels more intense having conversations online than it does face to face. So yeah, I mean, I run a lot. Every day, well, I say every day, 5 days a week, I run, and I make a big point. In fact, I had an hour window earlier between Teams calls, so I went straight out, had a run, and then did my next call sweating. So just making time for it, really. And you know, when you close your laptop at night, try and keep it closed, because I think now more than ever, the pressure on time and being at home all the time, it can be 24 hours, and you've got to be very, very strict with yourself. So it's very difficult, and I have my moments when I do really struggle, I have to say, with the intensity of it. And but I think when those moments come, you just have to take time out and make sure that you recharge your batteries.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. Definitely, we all need a break sometimes. What would you say the 3 things that you would suggest to enhance the government's policy on delivering good quality housing?
3 things. Well, I can think. There's 2 that are really strong in my mind. One is sort of legislation, particularly on the green agenda, and I get myself into trouble, and I get myself into a lot of feisty conversations with the developers on this, but I think it's time now to really move it on and start changing building regs and making it much more stringent, and really making it, because it's pretty easy really to get building regs now, if we're honest about it. I mean, I think our modular stuff is the insulation on the roof, for instance, is twice building regs, and that's without even trying. So the reality of it is a lot of developers, house builders in particular, will just hit building regs right on the nose, because that's what they've got to do. So, I'm from the green agenda. If we're serious about it as a country, we've really got to up the ante on that and start making it, real, not just tokenist. And then on the sort of the quality on the land side, I get really fed up with. We bid on a lot of sites, and we get the it's got to be great design, it's got to be sustainable, it's got to be great placemaking, it's got to be inclusive, it's got to have huge social value, all the stuff that all the people on the call will have heard of. But then often, so it's public sector owned, but then often it's all comes down to price. So they say all these things, and then it comes down to price, and it gets very, very frustrating that we score 10 out of 10 on all of the things, but if we don't score 10 out of 10 on the price, we're despite what the so I think what should happen on that is that landowners, and particularly public sector landowners, should just say, this is the land price. The land price is X million pounds or X pounds for this site, and let the best design win. And we're up for that, and that'll be just a great level playing field. Everyone knows what the price is, and I think that would provoke a lot more interesting architecture and design.
Yeah, thanks for that. So touching on what you said about sort of the social cohesion aspect. So with sort of social cohesion and sort of inclusion, that obviously is part and parcel of what creates a city and makes it resilient. So how would you say urban splash schemes contribute to the aspects of people's well-being in a city?
It's a really good question, and a lot of house builders will give you a great, wonderful scripted answer to this. We sort of social cohesion, social value, all that sort of stuff. It has to be bespoke for every scheme, and it can't just be a list of things. It's got to really relate. I did an analysis the other day about New Islington in Manchester, and that's a scheme we've been on for 15 or so years. And I was absolutely shocked to the policy, affordable policy on the site was nil. So there was, because it was a new millennial communities, there was no requirement for any affordable housing. When I actually look back at all the numbers that we've delivered with partners, we've delivered 31% affordable. And that's because it's the right thing to do. Yes, we've done the right deals with Great Places and other housing associations, but it's also about having a mixed, integrated community, which we think that very much is. And that's got to come from wanting that, and it's got to come from, you know, a genuine desire to do that. So the fact that we've done it without any planning requirements or any, you know, Section 106 requirements, it sort of surprised me at the level, really. But that's sort of the core of what we do. If it makes sense, and it's the right thing to do, and it's still good architecture, yeah, these sites are big enough for everybody, basically. And we make a big thing that we don't want to do a social or affordable housing that looks different to any of the private housing that we're doing. You know, you shouldn't be able to tell someone's tenure by the colour or shape of their front door.
That's great, thank you. A lot of your work is regeneration, and you know, with Fort Dunlop and the Rotunda as an example. Do you think that existing architecture that Urban Splash does, do you think the economic crashes and the empty buildings helps with the resilience of Urban Splash?
In terms of, do I think there are going to be more empty buildings?
Yeah. Do you think it helps with you going forward?
I wouldn't want to wish anyone to go bust if that's what you. I think the reality of it is most of the. I mean, when we started 26 years ago, you know, a mill building in Liverpool, Manchester, or indeed Birmingham, they just weren't wanted. A lot of them demolished. I mean, I can think of, you know, my hometown Nottingham, I can think of loads of beautiful Victorian mills that were just demolished in the 80s and 90s. It's very, very sad. And a lot of those have been done though now, I think. There's not many. The Avro building, which I showed earlier in the presentation, that is probably one of a handful of mills that have yet to be converted in Manchester. So I don't think there's going to be that many that fall out. There is a movement towards sort of 60s, you know, concrete structures, brutalist structures becoming interesting and on vogue. I mean, we've been interested in those for a number of years, but they're you know, they're getting more interest. So hopefully they won't get demolished, and you know, when they become vacant, they will be refurbished. But yeah, I mean, I wouldn't want to wish anyone to sort of go bust or anything. But yeah, they may well be opportunity, of course.
I suppose you've mentioned it a few times, how important design is to Urban Splash. Do you think that with this pandemic, that's going to have an effect on how you design spaces?
Yes, definitely. What we've definitely done during the pandemic is we've thought more about green space, outside space, particularly when we've got either apartment buildings or indeed we've got tight, you know, urban or kind of suburban tight sites where the density is quite high. And we've sort of, you know, rightly or wrongly, and it'll be tested over in fact, Portloop is the first time we've done it, is communal gardens rather than postage stamp small, you know, fenced off gardens that many of the PLC house builders will give you. We've now sort of designed there is that people get 3 or 4 metre defensible space, which is their own, but then that opens out into a communal garden where, you know, yes, it is sort of fenced off at either end so kids can play about securely. But I must admit, for me, I mean, I've got young kids. That would have been absolutely fantastic during the lockdown, and just the idea of, you know, getting to know our neighbours and, you know, the communal, all that, you know, is really, really important. So we're pushing that. We've sold all of our first phase of Portloop bar one home, and that was only fell out because of COVID. So they seem to be very, very popular. So we'll see. Yeah, but green space, communal gardens, those sorts of things are really, really important, and it's being asked about a lot from our potential customers.
Great, thank you. Obviously, we're living in testing, challenging times at the moment. What do you think your biggest challenge is, and how it's tested your resilience?
Biggest challenge the business faces at the moment on the house building side is build cost, quite openly. Having our own factory, doing modern methods of construction, doing it in a volumetric way, it is more expensive at the moment than traditional building. So our challenge is to get the volume through that factory and make it more efficient, and learn from our partners like Sekisui House, who have got several million square feet, in Japan, where they're incredibly efficient. So yeah, that's probably build cost. I mean, it's not just in the modular. I mean, build costs are challenging throughout the industry. I think, again, most people on the call will echo that, I'm sure. But yeah, I would say that's the big thing, really. There's a little bit of sort of, buyer nervousness. We've had very few people pull out that have committed to buying homes already. So there's a bit of that. The banks are okay so far. Our lenders have been fine. None of them have tried to pull any funding. So that's very, very different to 2008. So I'd say build cost is probably our biggest challenge at the moment, to get that efficiencies, particularly with our modern method of construction housing proposition.
I suppose with those sort of these modular houses, how do the services work in terms of, is it a plug and play in terms of the preparation you have to do to a site before these homes arrive? What's that preparation consist of?
Well, that's the madness of it all, Dion, is it often takes us longer to get the site ready than it does to build the house and put the house on top. So, again, almost everyone on the call will, have a services connection story that, because it is tough, substations and all that. But yeah, it's plug and play, quite literally. So electrics and water are there to receive, and then the house literally drops on top of the foundation and the services, and then we call it the sort of zip up team. They go to site and just connect up and do any snags, which we're getting much better at. And yeah, you can literally see tens of these done in a matter of a few days.
I find it amazing how quickly they go up. It's great. No doubt, with the pandemic, the way we're living at the moment, working from home, social distancing, things are all going to change. Is this going to be prioritised, and how will it change the schemes going forward?
You mean in terms of how we design schemes?
Yeah.
I think, I'm not sure it's going to have a huge impact on the residential, other than the what I said before about the open spaces. I think from the commercial perspective, where lots of people gather in a communal building, we need to really think about that. The very thing I was talking about, breakout spaces, communal areas, coffees, are problematic, and we need to get that all all up and running. We were huge on fingerprint recognition systems, installing those in all of our buildings. So clearly that doesn't feel particularly good at the moment. But yeah, there's lots of things that we're having to think about and adapt to. Construction's been very, very difficult. Clearly, our factory, we've had to make a safe environment for over 100, colleagues in the factory that we employ directly. That's been very, very challenging. So it's across the whole business, really, is that we're having to make amendments and adjustments and make it relevant. I think it's short to medium term anyway. So I don't think we want to make any wholesale physical changes just for COVID in terms of how we might design a particular house, but certainly the context of the house and the outside space is so important.
So again, with design, you do a lot of pairing with architectural practices and a lot of partnering. When you're considering partnering with an architectural practice, what do you take into consideration, or do they approach you? Or
yeah, I mean, we're continually approached. I get loads of emails, as most of my colleagues do, asking from architects, asking to present. I mean, we've gone with some of the world's biggest. We've worked with Fosters and Partners, and then we've worked with one-man bands, and we work with a guy called Maurice Shapiro at the moment in Manchester. He's a one-man band, and we work with all sorts of huge ones. I thought the best way is either through a competition. In fact, the great story is Glenn Howes. So Glenn, who I'm sure all of you know, I don't know if he might even be on the call, who knows. We did an architectural competition, REBA competition, open competition back in 2000, I think it was. And he was one of 174 entries that we had. And it was about, the concept was designing a new way of doing housing, and in this case his design was glass and concrete. And he was very young at the time. He's knocking on a bit now, but he'd only done some stuff in Ireland and no residential as far as I understand, but he had the best design. So we had loads and loads of entries and we picked him because it was the best design. So the long-winded answer to that is it's definitely, we like young, old, you know, it makes no difference about experience, all about what the best ideas are and best quality. So, you know, we haven't had a competition for a while, and that's provoked a thought actually, which we should do. We need to have a new competition for a while, but yeah, we're very open-minded when it comes to practices. And I think if there's any architects on the call that was thinking about it, I suppose the best way is if you've got a site that you know about that we should be looking at, give us a shout, and you know, that's a good way of getting in with it. But yeah, always keeping our eyes open for opportunities and competitions, because we used to do a lot of that, but we haven't done for a while, and we should do.
It's great to hear that quality of design is at top of the list. So, apart from the housing unit interior space and quality, what do you think help create a resilient community as a whole?
Paul Loop's a good example, I suppose. I think I said the first thing we did there is build a community park. It cost us £1 million. You don't get any return or IRR or yield or whatever profit on a park, and you know, clearly it's a huge site, that one, and it needed to feel part of the community. So we built that park. We then spent 20 grand or more, I think, on a party. We called it Play Out Till Tea, and we invited all of the local community basically to come to the park. We did a barbecue, we did loads of games and all sorts of things. But yeah, just making the community feel part of something really, and invited, and not that that's the new fancy development. So yeah, it's always bespoke. It's always about the local area. But yeah, it's the disaster. I mean, we'd hate to have a sort of South African style gated community. That's not what we're about at all. And you know, it's about understanding the local community, and we really try and get under the skin of the local community if we can.
So I think more from a business perspective, is there anything you would recommend to either an individual or an architect's practice if they want to get into property developing themselves?
Yeah, don't do it. No. Yeah, I mean, we employ loads of architects. So Adam Willits, who's our associate director, who's running the Port Loop job, he's an architect. I don't know if he did his part 3, but he certainly did part 2. He's an architect. He approached me one day after I did a talk. This was probably 10, 12 years ago. Said he wanted to be a developer, and you know, I've worked with him ever since. So Jonathan Falkingham, our co-founder, he's an architect, trained architect. Simon Humphreys, who's our development director, he's an architect. So absolutely, if there are architects that feel that the developers they work with aren't good enough, then you know, become a developer. I mean, good architects with a bit of a commercial acumen, and you know, being able to understand a deal, you know, will make great developers. And you know, there's lots and lots of examples of it. So yeah, I'd encourage as many architects to get into the field if they can. Birmingham needs, I've always said this, Birmingham needs young, hungry, bespoke niche developers. Manchester's got loads of them. I've always thought Birmingham hasn't got enough.
Well, good opening there then. Right, so talking about sort of scaling of development really, so going small and scaling up, how small a town would you go to, and how can resilience scale up to a region?
The smallest town, I mean, Northstowe it's not really a town at the moment because it's a new town. So there's been a couple of there's about 300 homes there. So we would do a new town from scratch, quite frankly. So that's as small as nothing. Um, we're hoping to do a small scheme actually, of 15 homes in Warsaw. We're just going through the planning process. It's been quite tough, but we're just going through the planning process. So yeah, but if it was a new site, that particular site we own already, but if it was a new site in a new location, we typically say it needs to be 100, ideally 200 homes for us to be able to make a difference. So that would be the sort of minimum, and maximum unlimited, really. I mean, we've got a long term ambition to do, as I said, some sort of new town village, do a whole new settlement, because I think I probably mentioned in the presentation, we're quite unusual. We do commercial, we do residential, we do leisure, retail, placemaking, and we manage and hold it. So, we think we're really well placed to do a huge settlement. So we are making some noises about that, and hopefully, one will come our way at some point.
So if Urban Splash had started again, all over from the beginning, is there anything you would have done slightly differently?
Well, I didn't set the company up. I'm one of the owners, but I didn't set it up. So you probably should ask Tom or Jonathan that one. Would they do anything?
Is there anything that you currently don't do that you think that Urban Splash should do?
Anything that we don't do that we don't lack ideas as a business. In fact, we've probably got too many things we want to do rather than we haven't thought of them yet. So that's probably one of our problems over the years. And when I sort of started, I showed you a hotel and a residential. I think what we've come to with the housing, it's the first time I think as a business we've realised it's something that we can properly scale up, because you can't scale out a Victoria Mill in Manchester. You can't scale up. But on the new build housing side, if we've got a number of products that can be rolled out, then something. So that's probably it'd been good to have found the scaled up side earlier, I suppose, rather than 20 odd years into the business. But that's the thing why we're really concentrated and excited, because we think we can make a real huge difference. And if we only did sort of 1 or 2% of the undersupply of housing, that's a huge business in its own right. So yeah, maybe we should just have got onto that quicker, I suppose.
It's a great question. I suppose the next question looks at, we're all working from home at the moment, most of us anyway. So when it comes to new housing, do your homes come with planning permission to run a business from home? Or do you think this is something that is the way forward in terms of where we're going for the future?
I don't think working from home needs planning, but it depends. I think it depends on what type of business it is and how many people. I think if you start having people in your home coming to work with you, then I think the planning use starts to get under scrutiny. So the answer is no. We've flirted with live workspace before. Not been that successful, quite frankly, because I think a lot of people up until the pandemic, I suppose, have liked to sort of that separation between work and home. So no, in terms of the housing we're doing at the moment, we haven't gone for any dual consents, but clearly it's on our minds. What is on our minds is things like where we're doing, big new settlements, is we need to start thinking about community buildings and hubs and where people can collaborate and work in the same environment. Because I think the days of everybody getting into a car at 8 o'clock in the morning and traveling, in rush hour, are really numbered, actually. But the idea, if you live in a village or a town where people can congregate, work together, 2 or 3 days of work, are really interesting. So we're looking at a community building in a site in Warrington that we've just secured, which may address some of that. So yeah, we're thinking about it, but not individually in the home at the moment, because I don't think you need individual consent. But I might be proved wrong on
that. So, what are your views on the greater advocation of diversity within Urban Splash? I suppose within both Urban Splash and the built environment sector, it's a fairly one-dimensional profession. It's something that's been spoken about a lot, but just wonder if I could get your views on that.
It's a great question. I'm embarrassed to tell you that our board is 5 white straight males. It's not a great reflection of our business. We actually look at a number of senior directors. We've got a number of females and people from different ethnic backgrounds as well. But we need to get better at it. I think the problem doesn't necessarily lie in our recruitment policy. I think it lies in the people in the industry, in terms of, we've got to encourage more women and people from different ethnic backgrounds to come into property, because it's, whether it's any sort of room, if we were doing this in the room now, what would be the breakdown of the population be? So it's something we're conscious of. It's something that we actively looking at and reviewing. But I think it's the industry needs to deal with it as well, because we need to encourage people from all sectors of society to come into the industry, and at the moment it's not good enough in property.
Definitely. So it's an interesting question. What is the throughput of the house by Urban Splash Factory in terms of units per week and month, and what are you aiming to achieve?
At the moment, they are moving towards doing 2.4 modules a day. So you times that by sort of 250 or so working days, you get to about 500 if my maths is right. So that's somewhere between 200 and 250 homes, because obviously the modules come in 2 or 3 stories, if my maths is right. The capacity of the factory, we think, is 500 or so homes, not modules, if we went on to night shift and so on and so forth. So clearly our business plan is moving towards 2,000 to 3,000 homes a year. So we need to do one or two things. We need to get a bigger factory, or we need to work with other suppliers and other manufacturers. So, and we're considering both at the moment. So if our business plan continues on the trajectory it's going on, we ain't going to be able to deliver it out of the factory. But the throughput is increasing all the time.
I'm glad you did the maths there, by the way. So
I'm wrong. I should know the answer though. But
so I've got a question here from a resident at Portloop. So he said, thanks for a really interesting talk. He actually is a resident at Portloop and wanted to say thanks that the park has been a really big success during lockdown. Being able to sit outside and start to get to know people. He wondered what kind of provision for public space is being developed on your other sites. That's from Jack.
Thanks, Jack. And I promise you, I don't think I've met Jack. So I didn't put him up to that.
Hey, Jack.
Anyway, Jack. It's great to hear, genuinely great to hear. We thought that might be the case, but to actually hear it is just wonderful. Makes me very, very, very pleased on that. I mean, it really depends on the sites. I mean, we've got big plans at Northstowe I mentioned. So there's a number of parks there, small sort of pocket parks, and then a long sort of linear park. We've just been successful on a site in Warrington, and the density there is very low. Actually, it's 10 houses per acre. I think Portloop is more like 25 per acre. So in Warrington, we can do some really, really interesting green space and parks for kids in particular, because I think families are going to be the big part of the market there. So it's really bespoke, horse for courses really, but it's something. It's almost like in the commercial world. When someone wants an office space, they have to have showers, they have to have communal space. It goes without saying now that one of the first questions they're asking is, what is the green space provision? What are you doing for the kids? So we're whether we want to do it or not is one thing. We're having to do it anyway, and it's something that we're keen to do. And there'll be more parks at Portloop. Jack will be pleased to hear. So it was not. There are more on their way. So watch this space.
That's great. Thank you very much, Nathan. As it's bang on 6 o'clock, we have done fantastically and finished on time. I just want to say a massive thank you to Nathan and to the BAA for putting on this fantastic event, and the sponsors and supporters and partners as well. So I'd just like to say thank you to Delta Light, Milliken, Marley, SKG Kitchen Gallery, Rainers and Outro as well for being really good supporters.
And then continuing on that list, thanks also to Alamure, Ibstock, Allgood, Armitage Shanks and Taylor Maxwell.
That's great. Thank you, everybody, and hope to see you at the next one. And thanks, Nathan.
Thanks, Nathan.
Thanks for having me.